Hi, my name is Ejel Khan, and you're listening to the Us People podcast by Savio Rocks.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savio Rocks, and today I'm lucky enough to have Ejel Khan here with me, who is a co-ordinator at the Muslim LGBT Network, and he also has a substantial background in multimedia production. Hey Ejel, well, thank you so much for coming to the Us People podcast. How are you?
Hello, yeah, I'm okay, thank you, and thank you for having me, by the way.
No, it's perfect. Thank you for coming on the show. So I'm going to jump into the questions about, what you actually do. And when I was reading about you and getting information and doing my research about you, I find it actually quite inspiring because this is a subject that a lot of people try to avoid, especially going anything to do with LGBT or anything to do with Muslims or putting them together. I find that people have a tendency to try and subtract them and not necessarily talk about it as much. Even in Caribbean families, we all have, I don't know what it is, it could be religion that stops people from talking about to their kids about sexuality and whether or not they accept it or not. But just tell me a little bit about your background in when you were growing up and what influenced you to actually get into this.
Well, my background is South Asian, so, I've got roots in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh.
Yeah.
When we talk about South Asia, but it used to be called the Indian subcontinent. Well,
Yes.
it used to be the British Raj. They
Yeah.
used to rule India, Pakistan, what is now Bangladesh, that area.
Yeah.
And now it's India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, obviously independent countries, but now they call it South Asia as a continent.
Yeah.
Before it used to be called the Indian subcontinent.
Yes, that's
That's
correct.
my roots, but obviously they're not just Muslims in that part of the world. There are Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists. It's the birthplace of Buddhism and Hinduism and Sikhism, by the way.
Yes.
India,
Very
modern day
true.
Pakistan, is was part of the whole Hindu culture. Indus Valley civilization and Sikhism was born in Pakistan. And obviously India with its roots in Buddhism and Hinduism. So we've got a mix of that, us, immigrants from that. So that was my background. It was Muslim, but culturally we were heavily influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism. Like I said, those cultures were part of my culture too, even though I'm Muslim. Like I said, culturally, I'm from that part of the world. So I was very much aware of that. And Christians too, we have a large Christian community in South Asia, So for me, I grew up in this country primarily, but I've been back, to my parents' country of origin. I'm from Luton in Bedfordshire, near London, but obviously I've got relatives in London as well, in East London. I've got a lot of relatives, and I grew up in London too, because we used to visit them, all the time. So that's my roots. I'm a Muslim, I'm South Asian, but British born. For me, it was really after 9/11 that I really went into the activism in a big way, because I felt, ours was a voice that wasn't heard, gay Muslims.
Explain to me what an activist is and does, for anybody who doesn't understand what an activist does, because for myself, obviously, I like to do a lot of research. So for me, I'm always searching and trying to find out what people are doing. But for anybody who doesn't do research, Ejel, tell the people what an activist actually does.
Yeah. Actually, someone who works on a grassroots level. So you'll work with different community groups. You campaign. Sometimes, you might be working in advocacy. You'll be helping people if they have a need, say, be it migrant communities, immigrant communities. So for me, I work in the LGBT arena as a campaigner. I'll work grassroots level. So I'll be out there highlighting some of the work we do and showcasing our work as well. It's not just like holding a banner and saying we're gay Muslims and we're here, because you have to kind of interact with different groups, be it religious institutions or educational institutions. So it's multifaceted in the way that you approach the work. So I'm a grassroots activist, meaning I'm out there campaigning for the rights of LGBT individuals and other activists who work in different fields and arenas, do similar work, be it racism or, working for migrants. You're highlighting issues in a certain community which might not necessarily be out there. Nowadays, obviously, a lot of it is done on social media because, that's your outlet. But before social media, I was doing it out on the street. I was working with, like I said, those organizations I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And grassroots work, just interacting with people. Like, and I'm speaking with you, I'm going to talk about some of my experiences and trying to bring that to the fore.
Yeah, of course.
And interact with different types of people. So not just like, I'm the coordinator of the Muslim LGBT Network, but we're open to allies.
Yes.
So you don't have to be Muslim or LGBT to join the group. Like you're an ally, and you support other people and you highlight people through your work in the media.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's that as well. You can be an ally and join our group. You don't have to necessarily be from, our community. But that's what campaigning is about, really. Trying to garner support from different, points of view, different communities, and just being out there, showing you're visible and trying to bridge the gap between communities. It's not just through education. Sometimes it's just through friendship as well. Befriending people from different backgrounds as well.
What made you actually get involved with the Muslim, particularly LGBT network? What made you? Was there something that happened, or was there an experience that made you realize that this is something that I want to do? Because experiences make people change automatically, makes them think that life should be lived in a different way. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to be part of the Muslim LGBT network.
Well, I'm a gay man myself. I happen to be Muslim. Mm-hmm. I'm part of the LGBT community anyway. And I live in Britain, a country with a lot of freedoms. So if I lived in somewhere, say, like Saudi Arabia, you could be punishable by death for being an outcast gay person or being, from the LGBT community. So it's different in different Muslim countries. Not all Muslim countries have the death penalty, by the way. It's different according to country.
Yeah.
But, there are many that have death penalty. So like I felt that I was in a privileged position to speak out and that I could. I do get abuse and stuff like that, and and I've had abuse through my life, but it was I was protected by law.
Yeah.
By our statute books in what I do. So that gave me the freedom. I thought, hold on, there are people who may be haters, don't like what I do, but I'm protected by law, so I can do this, and I should do this for those people who've lost their lives for being like me or are about to lose their lives or don't have the same freedoms as me. So I look at it much more on a global kind of scale, and as a global citizen, I feel I have a duty. So that's really what spurred me.
Yeah. When I was doing my research about you, I went onto the Muslim LGBT Network. I think it was the website you had or a link you had. And it's called Stand Up for the LGBT Against Hate Crime, which you published on the 13th of the 9th, 2019. Tell us a little bit about that particular campaign. And I do believe when I was reading, people got actually murdered for their sexuality. Tell me a little bit about it. What made you do? I obviously know that people were murdered, so that gave you a good reason to do the campaign. But tell me a little bit more about it, because I'm really interested in that.
Yeah. Well, Stand Up to LGBT Hate Crime was kind of disparate groups coming together. We were different groups. Like in London, we had Live With The T, which are a transsexual group. Live With The T, they're called. And your other groups like Muslim LGBT Network that I'm with. Then you had the Stand Up to LGBT Hate Crime, which was run by Nicola Field. She's another LGBT activist. So we're kind of diverse group of people who came together, against hate crime in the LGBT community, not just in the UK, but kind of broader, kind of global, bringing global awareness to what was happening. Because it's not just a problem with Muslims. Look, there's LGBT hate crime in Brazil. There's a large Brazilian community that live in London. So we had people from all over the world join our campaign. And some of these people were dissidents from other countries who fled regimes, and they're not all Muslims. Like I said, some of them, came from other Christian countries too. So it's about standing up against LGBT hate crime. But in this country too, there's been a rise in hate crime, particularly against the trans community. And so it was that as well. So it brought a lot of trans. Like Live With The T is a trans support and campaigning organization, and they were with us too. and there's B with the T, and other organizations that includes bi people, who people are bisexual. So, it was different organizations, different points of views, but all coming together under the auspices of standing up against LGBT hate crime, not just in the UK, but globally.
Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to. So, okay, how do you feel Muslims are treated within their sexuality? How do you feel that? So, if you came out and you said to another Muslim that you are gay, right? How do they respond to you?
What it is, it depends really what type of family you form,
Yeah,
and what type of tradition you're from within Islam. So if you come from a strict background,
yeah,
obviously that would be a problem. I'm talking about in the UK. If you're looking at it from a UK context,
mm-hmm.
if you came from a conservative Muslim background, it wouldn't be accepted. But how your parents react might be different. Because some parents would love you unconditionally,
Yeah.
because you're their child.
Yeah,
For me, it was difficult. I didn't really come out to my parents like that because I knew it wasn't accepted in my community. It wasn't necessarily what my parents thought, because I knew that they'd accept me to a point. I'm their child, but I felt like they were more worried about what the community thought. So it's a double-edged sword in that sense.
Do you feel that regardless of say Caribbean or Muslim, do you feel that people are more concerned about what people are saying rather than just accepting your child for who they are and loving them for who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I feel. I felt like, there's a lot of community pressure, be it, like you said, religious or cultural.
Yeah.
And people are more worried about what other people are going to say in reality. Because no one's coming up to me in this country and asking for the death penalty on me. And if they do, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah,
because,
true.
I can't be put into prison for my sexuality. Others like me, irrespective if they're LGBT plus.
Yeah.
We're a broad community, diverse community. So, we are protected. In that sense, in many ways, people like me, it's up to the people around them, their immediate family, if they accept them or not.
Yeah.
And how they treat the scriptures and how they treat their own kind. And I understand there's a religious argument. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to, but obviously, like you said, first and foremost, it's really about, your immediate circumstances. Like me, I live in a community. I was worried really about, initially what my parents were going to think. But then I was worried really what my community would think. And a lot of them are not even practicing Muslims in reality.
Ah, okay.
It's not like they're like, scholars or anything. I felt a lot of them were just lay members of congregation.
Yeah.
They just, they were, what we call culturally Muslim.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, it depends really on your parents and your community. But like I said, there are conservative Muslims out there who don't accept it. I was lucky. My family did eventually accept it. At first they were worried about what other people are going to think.
Yeah.
They're saying, oh,
Yeah.
You might get beaten up on the streets, or what other people are going to say, and this and that. That's what they were worried about mainly. Ah,
see, so it's nice to know that there are families out there that accept their children, because I've seen and been, obviously I'm married myself to a woman, so for me, I understand completely your concept of things and how you view things and understand things. Obviously, I'm half Indian and I'm half black too. So for me, I am dealing with both sides of the culture, both sides of two different worlds. For me, at first, it was obviously very hard for my mother to accept being on the Indian side, whereas my father already knew. And he told me, you are that way, and I tried to deny it myself, actually, to be quite honest with you, and I was like, no, I'm not. So but as I grew older, smarter, wiser, I understood this is what I am, and it's what makes me happy. And I realized, and I want to let everybody else know this as well, which I don't know if you would agree with, Ejel, that when you come out and say who you really are, you will see who really loves you and who will disappear. Yeah. And you see it through your friends. I'm, glad to hear that, you were accepted. And, it's heartwarming to hear your story too, because my one was opposite of yours. My one was like my mum accepting it and my dad not, so. Do you think for your dad, is it more an ego thing where he didn't want to accept it because his son is gay? And yeah, I think, it's difficult for males to kind of deal with the subject because you're dealing with another male. My dad's unfortunately not with us anymore. He's passed away. But, I did tell him before he passed away. And, I did feel that it is more difficult male to male.
to talk about this thing. There's mother's
Yeah.
intuition as well.
Yeah.
You know, it might be a stereotype, but with gay men particularly, we have quite close relationship with our mothers. Not always, you know. I don't want to, you know, go back to kind of, you know, stereotyping gay men, because there are all different types of gay men.
Of course.
You know, as there are lesbians and the whole LGBT plus community. But I had a particularly close relationship with my mother. My mother always knew, you know, she had women's intuition. But like you know, it was a lot of it was about self denial too. Just really come to terms with your own self before other people can come.
I think, I think a lot of people don't understand how hard it is to be able to accept it for yourself. And we don't make a big deal about it with ourselves necessarily, but a lot of people make this big, I don't know how to say, if I'm correct, a big fuss about our sexuality. I didn't make a big fuss about my sexuality. I just knew who I was and I wanted to be happy. And Ejel, I don't know if it was the same for you. Did you feel like you went into a dark place, or do you feel like you realized who you was and that made you happy and fulfilled?
It was the same for me in one way, because the added dimension was me being Muslim, and you know how Muslim, you know, communities across the world view it. So initially, I was just like, you know, coming to terms with my own sexuality. I'd actually reconciled my faith, my sexuality, who I was, my culture, everything a long time ago. It was like other people and the community I come from, they still haven't reconciled those things.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. It's different because, like, you know, coming from a, you know, not just a cultural point of view, a religious point of view, it's difficult. You know, like I said, some countries have the death penalty. So, like, that's what, initially, what it was, that I would not even kicked up a fuss if I felt there wasn't a problem. Initially, I was happy with myself.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even really come up to my parents, you know, but I was happy within myself and the life I was leading. Like you said, I was content. And I came to a point where, you know, I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I wasn't confident in myself, or, you know, if I hadn't accepted it myself. So, but you're right. I mean, I think the added dimension of being Muslim, because we are one of those communities, and I'm just saying it's just us, but, you know, mainly the Muslim community does have a problem with homosexuality. Other faiths do as well, don't get me wrong, and other cultures do as well. But, you know, we have a particular problem in that sense that we would apply the death penalty, saying, and stuff like that, where in other, you know, kind of, you know, traditions might not. So that was the only thing, because I knew that one day I'd be on a collision course with the very people I grew up with, if you know what I mean. So my campaigning work started locally, where I live in Luton. Then I took it to London. Then it became, because of the internet and such, like, became international with social media. So, you know, like you, I had that journey, but I think the added dimension was being Muslim, I think. But just my personal point of view, you know. But since, you know, I've been campaigning, I've noticed a lot of other Muslims felt that too. You know, we have that issue within, you know, our faith, and it's still going on.
Well, how do you feel that the Muslim community can help to make the LG community better, safer, more enjoyable and free?
I think it's all about, you know, attitude and how you engage with others. What's happened is, in this country since '67, it's been legal to be gay, you know, and then, you know, we had the lowering of the age of consent. You know, that happened in the '90s. Then you had equal consent at a point, because when I was growing up, the age of consent was 21. They got lowered to
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, they got lowered 18, then 16. Then you had civil partnerships come in, and then you had same-sex marriages. So, like, I've seen a lot of changes in that time. And what's happened in the Muslim community haven't really kept up with those changes. You know, they've kind of kept themselves to themselves, and a lot of times lived in a bubble where a lot of these advancements in society, you know, haven't really applied to them. It's not because they, you know, disregard them. It's because in many ways they live, you know, not under their own laws or anything like that, but they live, you know, in a bubble. Like, you get other communities, like the Orthodox Jewish community or Sikhs or other communities might be conservative, you know, and they might not be asking for a death penalty per se, but they're quite conservative when it comes to certain things in their faith.
Yeah.
You know, I've you know, met other Christian people who, because, you know, our scriptures, you know, the whole Muslim scriptures, they come from the Old Testament, you know, to the New. So they come from the Torah to the Bible, and they were given to us. It's the whole story of Sodom and Gomorrah. You know that story?
Yeah,
it's the
I've
word
heard of
sodomy.
it.
Yeah. The word sodomy derives from the word Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you get me? There were two, you know, towns, and the Prophet Lot rained, you know, fire and brimstone upon the inhabitants, because, you know, they were straying from their religion, and one of the things they were doing, it wasn't just about homosexuality. It was about male rape. It was about rape. It was people who were straying away from their religion, you know, and it comes from that story. So if you think that story was first mentioned in the Torah, you know, the Old Testament, who knew the Gospels in Christianity, but we are the ones who take it literally, and we, you know, we've had a a major problem with interpreting those scriptures. And those scriptures come from the Abrahamic faith. They're an Abrahamic, tradition. So it's not just like, Muslims are, singular or, isolated in their beliefs. We come from a tradition. We are part of the Abrahamic faith. You had Jewish, Christian, and Muslims. So, but we take it literally. Not all Muslims do, but some Muslims do, and that's the problem. I felt all my life, because it was the kind of scriptures, that I would hear time to time. That I felt, that I had a problem with, and I'm still, kind of battling with that.
I was gonna ask, are you still battling with?
I'm not myself in that sense that I reconcile my faith and sexuality.
Yeah.
It's the kind of views of the community, in that sense that that's my work. That's what I do. So what I do is, I'm not an expert on scripture, or I'm not a scholar, But what I do time to time is I seek religious guidance from imams, and you know what? I've actually found, a good communication, this leeway with imams, because they actually know the scripture. What I find the real problem I've had in the past was with kind of lay members of congregation.
Yeah.
Like, you might get lay members of congregation in a church. Similarly in the mosque, you'll get someone who comes along who doesn't necessarily doesn't know the scriptures, thoroughly, but has got their own opinion.
That's true.
But
yeah.
when you go to an imam, they give you, a kind of educated point of view. They're a scholar and an academic in that line, be it Islamic studies, and they can give you, a kind of balanced, view of it. And it's not always been black and white, because I understood there's a lot of grey areas there, and it's about interpretation as well. It's what kind of faith you come from. More people call them moderate Muslims, I call them more mainstream Muslims, interpret it in a different way. Then you've got conservative Muslims, but even the conservative Muslims, the way they interpret it sometimes, even they, would be taken to task by other schools of thought and other imams. So, there's a whole debate going on there as well. And what I've noticed is, like, I was accepted to a point. Like when I spoke to my local imam and explained my situation, and they showed me some of the grey areas and understanding about sexuality within, the context of my religion. So it's about, you get, an educated point of view from a scholar or an academic. That's what I meant,
Yeah.
And you might not necessarily get that from the person, next to you in the congregation, because they might not always know, the issues at hand. So sometimes, you have to seek religious guidance. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because what I noticed that, I found more acceptance in doing that, because there were grey areas that I could work within, and there were certain things that I could find out more about. And that's what I do, try to kind of bridge the gap.
Ejel, do you feel that religion is a way of controlling people in the way that they think and feel towards people who are open about their sexuality?
Well, it has been, you see, particularly when you had kind of autocratic regimes, totalitarian regimes, and Islamist regimes come under that, banner. So it's not just Islamism. You've had other, traditions, faith traditions, or even cultures. I give you an example. I grew up in Britain, and I grew up with the African Caribbean community, who were predominantly Jamaican, but from other islands in the Caribbean, small island people too, they should call them, and Jamaica as well. No, and the Jamaicans, obviously Christianity being a major part of their faith, and the same scriptures we talk about that the Muslims refer to, and the music, that came about. I remember I grew up in the 90s mainly, and it was Buji Banton, Mumbaya in a Bati Boy head and all that, and calling gay people chichi man and stuff like that, and advocating, violence against gays too. If you go Mumbaya, meaning shoot a, Bati Boy, a gay man in the head. It's not language I would use, but I'm just using it for.
Yeah, you're just using the lyrical content that somebody else was using.
Kind of, explain to you what happened. And I remember watching Shabba Ranks on The Word, and he was saying, I go by the Gospels, the Bible. This is, because Mark Lamar was a presenter, and he took him to task on it. I asked him, what do you think about what's happening in dancehall and raga at that time? So think about it. Like Jamaica is known as one of the most homophobic countries on earth. You didn't expect Saudi Arabia to come in that table. Well, Jamaica's right up there. You've got the gully people in Jamaica who are forced underground, literally, to live in gullies, in tunnels, because they're part of the LGBT community. Some of them are trans, some of them are gay, bi, LGBT plus. They kind of identifiers, but they're called the gully people in Jamaica because they're forced to live in gullies, and it's illegal in Jamaica. But they haven't got the death penalty per se, but it's cultural. Do you understand? And there's other countries in the continent of Africa, say, and they're Christians. In Uganda, there's groups who go around attacking, So it depends where you are in the world. Jamaica's in the Western world, but obviously the African descendants, and then you got Christianity in all, its facets that now, particularly in the Western tradition, has come to terms with sexuality. But if you think about Jamaica, like a culture which I identified with because of my friends, the music, and but when I looked at another side of Jamaica, that side I didn't like. It wasn't, the people I met, they were good people, but that was prevalent. And now, there's been a backlash against it. Even in Jamaica, you had Buju Banton now saying, okay, I was wrong for saying that. He has gone on record after that.
Ejel, do you feel like people accept lesbians more than gay men? Because I feel that gay men are more targeted. The reason why I say this, let me explain. The reason why I say this is because I had a conversation with someone once, and he was a Jamaican guy. And so I said, oh, do you have any gay friends? He said, no, I don't have gay friends. I don't have gay men friends, he said. But I have lesbian gay friends. So I said, how come you accept 2 women but you don't accept 2 men? Now, what's your view on that, Ejel? Because I find that a lot of people do accept gay women more necessarily than gay men, but I just want to hear your views on it and how you feel about it.
Yeah. But I think a lot of men have a fantasy of lesbians, how they view it. It's a stereotype of lesbians. They think like they might, become involved in a threesome maybe or something like that, or they like that idea of 2 women making out in front of them. They don't find that repulsive. They find it sexually stimulating. So it's cultural. It's come about in our culture that, did you hear about recently, it was last year, I think now, when the lesbian couple got attacked in London on a bus. So and the boys were asking them to make out in front of them, and they refused to. So I'm saying it goes deep in our culture. Maybe the whole lesbian thing for them is more of a kind of sexualized kind of image. It's not real because it's not real. Lesbians who love each other and have relationships. For them, maybe it's acceptable to a point. In their idea. So I found that too. Maybe because and culturally too, I think other men do feel threatened by gay men, especially feminine gay men. They feel, if they're camp or they feel like, oh, why are you acting like that for, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing they are. They think, oh, gay men will hit on them. So it's that as well. I think it's being threatened, the masculinity. It's not that all gay men are feminine or camp, because that's not true either. We've seen subsequently gay rugby players come out. So it's different. I think, because I think it's that male thing again, that machismo. That you wouldn't necessarily want to be around another man who's gay. But like you said, maybe they find it more acceptable. 2 lesbians, okay. The lesbians. I'm not threatened by that. That's not my gender. And the images they have of lesbians. Do you understand? Maybe.
But this is the thing that gets to me, is that they have an image of us and how they perceive us to be, when that's not true at all.
Yeah, some people are, because it's media. The media has perpetuated images of that. When I was growing up, it was the campy feminine man on television. Like there used to be this program called Are You Being Served? And John Inman used to play this character called Mr. Humphreys. This kind of mincing queen, camp, irreverent. And that was the only representation we had in the 70s. And you had other presenters like Larry Grayson, who was another gay performer. Subsequently we got like Ejel Khan, Graham Norton, but they come in that kind of tradition of camp entertainers. But then again, you have other people like Stephen Fry, who's gay, and he's not someone you automatically consider to be camp. So he's considered as an intellectual, but he's gay. Do you understand? So they see now, a lot of people see that there's different types of gay people out there, and lesbians were seen as these butch women that were referred to as dykes in dungarees. Those type of women, who looked butch and who are out fighting for their rights on the street. You could see the campaigners in the day they would highlight, more butch-looking lesbians, or the fantasy of lesbians, 2 really good-looking women making out. So throughout the times, now it's changing, obviously, because we've got social media and we've got much. It's much more of an egalitarian society, and like I said, all the kind of advancements we've had in kind of the LGBT plus movement. I just do feel, some people are still, kind of archaic in their notions of LGBT plus community and how they view us. They need educating.
Totally.
In other words, and it depends what community you come from. A lot of communities don't discuss it.
Do you think it's also ignorance as well? But I mean ignorance in the lack of knowledge, like you just said, when it comes to sexuality.
Well, it is. I mean, a good example, like, the whole, when I refer to dancehall culture, Jamaican culture, it's similar there. And that's nothing to do with my faith in that sense. Most Jamaicans that I knew, the ones who hadn't converted, were Christians. And you're right, it was ignorance. It was ignorance to do with the community they don't want nothing to do with, And it's about machismo as well. It's about being macho. And that doesn't fit into that, they think. You understand? So, and similarly in my community, it was the same. It's ignorance. It's people, they think you're the other. They think you live in another place, in another time. And back in the day, they used to think, all gays are like, where I lived in Luton, they think, gays are from like Brighton or Soho or in London, somewhere else.
Yeah.
Apart from, not that, they're going to school with a gay person or they might know someone next door to them, because that seemed out of their kind of experience. It was to do with ignorance. When I was growing up, they had Section 28 or Clause 28, which prohibited the teaching of anything that was deemed to be promoting homosexuality.
Yes.
And that only got repealed in just after the millennium. I think it was about 2002. So if you think about it, in the 80s, because he only came in really in the 80s, and I was still going, late 80s he came in, like 88, something like that, and I was still going to school then. So do you understand, like, it's part of our culture. We weren't allowed to promote any other, in those days, just called alternative lifestyle. They weren't alternative lifestyle. They were just people, who may be different to you, but who are just human beings, who happen to identify, as LGBT plus. But we weren't taught about it. So it's not the fault. It's a generational thing. You've got this new generation today, the young generation. They are much more accepting. I do feel. I meet a lot of young people, and I have felt that there is a sea change there because they've grown up with all those rights. They've seen same-sex marriages. They've seen, people who are out and proud. And the young people I meet, there's much more of a celebratory atmosphere, like when I go to Pride.
Yes, totally.
Like, young people there, and you see, because they've grown up, not being ashamed of themselves, and they're represented truly now. You're getting, kind of diversity, truly represented on, not just on TV but media as well.
I love the way you put things across, because you explain it in a way that makes people understand exactly how it is from your point of view. Another question that I actually wanted to ask you was, and this just spontaneously, when I was writing your write-up, this spontaneously came to me, and it went something like this. If you took religion, race out of the equation for a moment, so I'm saying, if it didn't exist, if all those aspects of religion and race, doesn't matter where you come from, did not exist, do you feel that people would accept sexuality a lot more and be more open to the fact of just letting people live and be who they are?
They would, and that society is a society we live in. Me and you, like, it's the UK. UK is a society that does not judge you, on the basis of your faith, your colour, your sexuality, or anything. This is a truly free society. There are other societies like that in the West too, like, not just in the West, there's other countries, but mainly I'm talking about, like, in a European context, or say a Western context, like in America, Canada. There's many countries. There are other countries outside that too, don't get me wrong, Latin America, be it in Asia or Middle East, that are progressive, and, are changing and have changed. But this society does that. This is the society where I can sit here and talk to you, and you can talk about your experiences. I can talk about my experiences freely, without, feeling judged. I truly feel this is a non-judgmental society. It's a truly free society. But sometimes, obviously, we take it for granted because we live here.
Yes, that's true.
We forget those freedoms, and it's just human nature to take it for granted because, we don't always kind of see what happens in other countries. But now with social media, we've seen that, hold on, other people in other countries don't have those freedoms. Or with, like, in the media at large, you see, images, or reports. Like, it's mainly on social media now because a lot a lot of people are posting stuff from all over the world on it, and we're getting to see that other countries, they haven't got the freedom. Like recently, you've seen with the whole kind of Black Lives Matter campaign in America, which is obviously prevalent in this country too, with Black Lives Matter in London and the UK. But we saw it because someone filmed it on a camera phone. But we know that existed in America from time immemorial, ever since police have been about, but nowadays, obviously, we can document those things, put them out there, but someone lost their life, but we know others have, because even after that, we had the other, gentleman, the victim who lost his life in Atlanta. So, like, we're seeing stuff like that happening, and we're realizing, hold on, in Britain, our police don't have guns, they don't carry guns, and I know we've still got problems with, structural racism, systemic racism, because I've seen the protesters out there in London, and not just in London, like those Black Lives Matter protests where I live in Luton, and across the country, wasn't there?
Yeah, totally.
And there's a whole Black Lives Matter in the UK, and we have to understand that, of course, these are inequalities that have to be highlighted, and, I'm someone, obviously, I'm coming from a different perspective in the sense that I'm Muslim and I'm LGBT, but I'm also for supporting human rights. And for me, if there's injustice out there, we have to highlight it. And the country we live in, the UK, it's not me, I'm not boosting up this country because, I'm not part of the government. This is what I'm saying, because you asked, like, is there a country? Well, I do feel like, we still got a long way to go when it comes to stuff.
Yeah, I feel that same way. Like yeah, me too.
And like you said about, I hope if we took religion and, race out of the equation, but in many ways, we are protected. We do have freedoms, but it's still a societal thing, because in society, race, still, is an issue, and religion is still an issue. We've seen with Muslims, and we've seen, like, whole Black Lives Matter, campaign here in this country. So don't get me wrong, I'm not, belittling the experiences of, say, my community or the Black community or anything like that. What I'm saying is we are still, better than a lot of countries, but we've still got a long way to go too.
Yeah, most definitely so. So do you feel that, another subject that I wanted to touch base with you is, do you feel that people are given a fair chance when it comes to their sexuality, when it comes to them finding work in any industry that they want to be in? Because I find I didn't see it. It was a few years ago with me when I was filling out an application form, and then it asks for your sexuality. They never used to have that before. Yeah. So for me, do you feel that it's fair that that is on the list, and people actually do judge you on your sexuality before they give you a job, even if you're qualified?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a double whammy, see, because back in the day, it was the same with race. They would ask you, what's your
race,
origin, ethnic origin, and the problem was people used to say, oh, because in one way I understand where you're coming from, because, like, why should we have to, divulge that information? But it was a way of monitoring, prejudices as well. They wanted to see the experiences of BAME communities in the past. That's why it all came about, because it was the Commission for Racial Equality that really pushed for those kind of statistics to come about. And they've been around since like 1976. And latterly, obviously, to do with sexuality as well. Because initially, I used to be a bit wary as well. What's my sexuality could do with this job or whatever, like you. But then I understood it's a way of monitoring, people's experiences, because they want to know how you feel. Because you don't have to always divulge the information if you don't want to. But I know what you mean. There is a pressure now into doing that. But the way I look at it is sometimes you have to see how people from diverse backgrounds are treated, in different work situations, and, I have felt, because I work in the media, there was much more tolerance, and acceptance towards the gay community, even from the BAME community in the media, because I felt that, they were an artistic, creative community, So in one hand, I've found acceptance, not just being tolerated, because it's one thing being tolerated and acceptance is another. But you're right. I mean, I do feel that whole comment, what's your sexuality, ticking a box, does that help or not? It's still out there. When it comes to race, it has helped, because it has, in one way, we have kind of, been able to kind of, scrutinize people's behaviors through it, and to see the workforce, how many people are from a BAME community, or even like recently with the coronavirus, the stats were out there, BAME communities, how they were affected compared to, the wider community and such like. And I hope the sexuality thing as well, it's not misused, It's not a way to target us, but in a way, I look at it, it's like in a way to see our experiences, that, we're out there in the workforce today. But traditionally, with the LGBT plus community, there was great acceptance within the arts.
Yeah.
That's another stereotype, because obviously not. I mean, there's LGBT plus identifying people who work in all walks of life. I don't want to make up that, but traditionally there was an acceptance within the arts, the creative sector. What I found.
No, that makes total sense to me as well, because it's sexuality is a hard subject to talk about for anybody. So what I wanna ask you is that what made you so passionate about being in an LGBT network and community? Was there an experience that you had? Because one thing I haven't asked you yet is, what experience have you had or had from someone that was either a good experience or a bad experience that you can share with the people who are listening to the Us People podcast, so that they can understand your point of view with sexuality and how you've been treated?
You know what? I've had many bad experiences. I'm talking about violence, quite
Whoa.
severe violence. Yeah. You know what? I do find it hard to always discuss those kind of really emotive subjects, because obviously, it took me a lot of therapy and, to get to where I am.
Yeah,
but
of course.
In the early days, particularly, there was a lot of violence involved. Nowadays, not so much. I'm much older now.
Yeah.
So but even our movement has grown as well, and there's much more of a tolerance in my community towards it. So even if someone wants to beat you up, they very rarely do that, because they realize, they can't. Homophobia is in the statute books, as a hate crime as well. And it's not just on a racial or religious basis, because obviously homophobia comes under that as well, and we've seen homophobic attacks. So in one way, I've had very bad experiences, particularly in the early days. Not so much now, not in violence or anything like that, but occasionally I still get trolled online and stuff like that, which still upsets me. Don't get me wrong, it still greatly upsets me. But the whole kind of violence and stuff like that is something that I had to overcome. I felt I should not have, but it was a sign of the times. Really, it was a much more homophobic environment in those days. Today's different. Even in my community, they know they can't get away with it. I'll be honest. So and young people are being taught that in schools too. So, it is a different landscape today. But it's really some of my formative experiences in my formative years, stayed with me. I would not wish that upon anyone, and that's why I do what I do, because I feel the young people today, they're in a much better position in society where they can be out and proud. Obviously, they're still going to get haters, and there's still, hate crime out there. There's still homophobic, and there's incidents of hate crime. You hear it all around the country. It's not like it's gone away, but it's far less than it was, but it's reported more as well, in that sense that if someone, is being bullied or, attacked because of their sexuality, they'll report it to the police or the school, or whoever, and I encourage them to do that. But yeah, society has changed, and what changed my perspective was those experiences that I had. We didn't have any, right of reply really in those days when it came, because even the police, the whole culture was homophobic.
Yeah, that's true.
The community was homophobic. Today, I've seen there's diversity training within the police. The police are on pride marches. You see them. You see openly gay policemen and women and trans officers. You see members of the clergy.
I believe that we have come a long way. I do believe we have, but like you said, we still need to keep moving. We still need to keep marching. We still need to keep representing. We still need love. Never loses. Love always wins. So it doesn't matter what kind of love you have, as long as you have a pure, positive love towards someone, it will always win, because love can take you out of depression. It can take someone out of a bad place, regardless of their sexuality. So for me, it's more of a case of we need to just keep marching. I think that's important for even activists like yourself who keep representing people who are LGBT, so that they can keep on moving forward and understanding that there is people out there to support them. So another thing I also wanted to ask you is, what was the earliest experience where you learned that language had power to represent something that you were truly passionate about within the LGBT community?
I was actually in school because, like, after that, obviously, like, as a Muslim, I'd go to mosque, not regular, but on special occasions, or sometimes, like your parents would take you, and you'd hear elements of scripture mentioning, maybe, it wasn't all the time, but sometimes it might mention sexuality. So that was later on, maybe in my teenage years, I would hear about sexuality, at the mosque, would affect me because, I'm coming to, a realization of my own sexuality, and my sexual awakening going to puberty. But at school, in the early days, I would hear stuff like that. They would say, in those days, they used to use the word homo. And latterly, and after that, it was Batty Boy and all that. But, in the early days, oh, listen to me, you're a homo. It was a joke. Like, then after that, I heard about, gay was used as a, pejorative kind of term. Like, oh, that's gay, meaning that's rubbish, and that's kind of stopping now as well. That, that was, an issue, even up to like a decade ago. So like when I was young, they say, oh, you're a homo or something. That was a, a pejorative word, and then later batty boy. So it changes, gay has always been used as a pejorative term to put people down and as a negative thing. It was used, and particularly in the BAME communities, we have a sense of masculinity that other communities don't. Like seeing two black men holding hands and kissing, there's some from our community might find that repulsive. There are, and there might be some from my community who might find two men, Muslim men or Asian men, not just Muslims, but let's take Muslims out of the equation, let's say South Asian as a race, they might not like it either, because I've got Sikh and Hindu friends.
How is it for you when you're walking down the road and you're holding hands with your partner?
You know what the honest truth is, like if I'm say in my hometown of Luton,
Yeah.
I've always kept away from doing PDAs. Public displays of affection, because it's not the kind of place you do it. It's a working class town. I'm a working class guy. I grew up in a working class town. My father used to work in a factory.
Do you not do it because of fear, or do you do it out of respect?
It's not that I don't do it. It's just like I think I've been programmed that way. It's just something that instinctively I know. The minute I'm on a train coming back from London, I change my behavior.
Yeah.
And you're right. Maybe it is out of respect, understanding the communities. So obviously I wouldn't go and kiss my partner in front of someone or even hold hands. I just, stay away from that. But I do always feel that when I'm in London,
yeah,
I have a bit more,
affection,
a bit more freedom. Yeah, it's not that I'm out there hugging and kissing in London either, but there's a bit more freedom that I feel.
But do you feel a way when you see two like straight people holding hands and kissing, and obviously it's been accepted? One thing I just want to throw out to everyone, I don't know even if they knew this, but it's just some knowledge that when we are not born with any sexuality. So we're not born straight, we're not born gay apparently. We are born, as they say, bisexual. So you just love. Yeah, and it's our parents who show us, oh, you should be with a boy or you should be with a girl, depending on our gender, and teaches us that we should be with a girl or a boy, and that's how it is. So therefore, our parents are our role models in the sense that they tell us whether or not we should be with a man or a woman. And I just wanted to throw it across to you because how do you feel about the reason why I asked you, are you afraid of showing public displays of affection to people, is because do other people, do you or your partner feel awkward seeing somebody else showing affection towards each other, but knowing that you can't show that same amount of affection?
It's different where you are. Like sometimes, if you feel your safety is at risk, you have to take that decision.
Of course.
It depends where you are. So if I'm in a place where I feel my safety might be at risk if I did a PDA, with my partner, a public display of affection, then I have to consider that. Right? A good example, like when you mentioned the Stand Up to LGBT Hate Crime campaign, one thing we did was a kiss-in. We held a kiss-in in London. Yeah, we held a kiss-in, and it was outside of Parliament. And the kissing wasn't us like, French kissing. It was just done to show affection, for each other and to show publicly. So it was a kissing. And in that environment, I felt okay, doing that. But it depends where you are. Sometimes, for your own safety, you might have to consider, your options. And that's how it shouldn't be like that. You're right. Because I think we kind of societally kind of engineered like that. I think you're right. It's a societal thing about how you grew up, your own community, your parents, and how you feel. And I'm like that too. Many ways, I grew up in a town that we didn't do PDAs. Especially if you were from the LGBT plus community. So whenever I come back to my town, I can revert back to that. I shouldn't, but if I don't, there'll be trouble. Then there'll be people out there saying I'm inciting. You get me? Violence, or they'll be saying that I incited their, wrath. So in many ways, I kind of keep the peace without, okay, they know I'm out. You get me? They know who I am, and time to time they've known that I've had a partner or say, I'm with someone. But sometimes we refrain from that because, I live in a town with a 50,000 plus Muslim population. It's got one of the largest Muslim populations in the country. So, you have to be wary about where you are. And different places, obviously like at a pride event, I'm going to feel safe and, harmonious. But I just have to judge it. And it's not that because it shouldn't be like that. I should be able to do what I do. I do, and, it's not even out of respect in many ways. Sometimes it's out of personal safety. You feel like, that's not, because some of the areas that I grew up in, if there's any kind of outwardly, gay couples, LGBT plus identified people, they'll get attacked. It's not everyone attacking them, but there's a minority out there, who are homophobic. Do you understand?
Yeah, totally.
That couple got attacked on the bus. They weren't even,
they were minding their own business. They were just going home. All they were doing was going home.
But they were perceived as a couple, and that's what I mean. So sometimes, even if you're perceived as a couple, you could feel threatened. So it shouldn't be like that. Don't get me wrong. I wish I could walk hand in hand with my partner, around my town. But it's something that I haven't done in the past. And most of my partners have not really been from my town, because I live only 30 miles from London, you see. So I've always found London to be much more bohemian, much more accepting. And it's not all parts of London, and I appreciate, there are parts of London, be it East London or other, areas, where you have different communities from all different backgrounds who might not accept it, not just Muslim communities. I'm talking about, there's white working class communities out there as well, in London, or black communities. But what I've found in certain parts of London that I've frequented, particularly the artistic community that I know, who work in the creative industries, I've always felt open with them. But it's not something I've always felt in my town. And different parts of London as well, I've not felt that because, we had a campaign in Whitechapel. You could see, if you put my name, Ejel Khan, and Whitechapel, will come up with some of the campaigns I did in Whitechapel to talk to some of the people there.
Yeah.
And, we did grassroots work there. And Whitechapel is a similar community where I lived in Luton, even though, similar demographics. But obviously, they're a community in London which is becoming gentrified, and, they've got their own issues with, housing and, kind of just saturation of people who live there, overcrowding. But, it's about education. So I do go out there time to time, and we do, the whole kissing thing was, through the stand-up to LGBT hate crime people.
Yeah.
It's something that I, on my own, through the Muslim community, would not necessarily done, because that's not acceptable in my community. And a lot of even the LGBT community don't want to kind of overtly, seem to kind of incite, any kind of violence or, backlash. So it was about that, there shouldn't be one rule for one community, one for another. But unfortunately, we do have that because of multicultural. You've got many communities that live in their own little bubble, and they're not necessarily living under Sharia law, but they have their own conservative attitudes, and they've grown up, because of multiculturalism, because we were left to our own devices in many ways. I'm grateful to multiculturalism for a lot of things, but some things, do you understand? Because kind of religious extremism came in through the back door. Do you understand? It had nothing to do with multiculturalism.
Well, religion is a form of power and control.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, because of multiculturalism, we had a lot of people who espoused kind of, extreme views. They were allowed to propagate their ideas, and they were out about in the community. But now we realize, some of these people, their opinions, their rhetoric is not acceptable. Yeah. Irrespective if they think they're coming from a religious perspective or not, But sometimes, because of multicultural, we had little communities, they had their little groups and their pockets, And unfortunately, that's the kind of environment I grew up in, and it shouldn't be like that. You should be free to be yourself.
Yeah.
Wherever you are.
That's the part I was saying how do you feel? But another question I have for you Jealous. How can someone be part of the LGBT community to help other people and inspire them to feel safe and be free in who they are and what they are?
It's about respect as well. As LGBT people, what we can't, especially from BAME communities. Our communities are at times much more conservative, than other communities. I'm not just talking as a Muslim here. I was South Asia. I'm talking someone who comes from a BAME community. And I've got friends who are black, white, mixed race. I grew up in England. Do you understand? And I had friends from all different backgrounds, and I had partners from all different backgrounds too. Be it religious or racial. So for me, it's about understanding those communities and trying to engage with them, but on a level they can understand too. Sometimes if I'm talking to, say, religious people, I know I'm talking a different way to conservative Muslims than I would to, say, my partner, or my other gay friends, or my other friends from LGBT plus communities or who work in the creative industries. So it's understanding where the person's coming from. With some people, they're not, inherently homophobic or anything like that. They just might not have had those experiences of engaging with someone, who identifies as LGBT plus. It's respecting their point of view too, because we live in a democracy. Someone can say that I think homosexuality is a sin. Of course, we can challenge them on that as QPOC, as QPOC, queer people of color. We can challenge them on that, and we should vehemently. But remember, we live in a democracy. If a little old white Christian lady can say, hold on, the Bible says this, and they do sometimes. You see, no one goes around saying she's an extremist or he's an extremist. We have to let people have their point of view, as long as obviously in a legal framework, but we have to do it with respect too.
Yes, totally.
When I'm speaking to religious communities, it's mutual, so they respect for me, but I have to understand the boundaries when it comes to, the language that I will use, and it has to be appropriate, the language too, depending on the audience, or the public concern. If I went to a black Christian group, be an African Caribbean or even an African, and I've spoken to different Christian groups from different backgrounds, and you're wary about their own, cultural background or the religious background, and you're respectful of that. It's like when you walk into a place of worship. If I'm asked to take my shoes off before going to Sikh Gurdwara, and cover my head, I'll do that out of respect. If I go to a church, I'll respect the church, won't I? If someone's singing hymns, even if I didn't even know, the hymns, but I still go along with it, it's just respect. And I've been to churches, I've been to other places of worship, and I've spoken to people from different backgrounds, not just my own. And it's just about respecting one another. But obviously, that sometimes there are parameters, there are boundaries, which is, and that's my work. Some of my work, one thing I'm really lucky is to be able to engage on a theological basis with, Muslims, be it, scholars or academics,
Yeah.
Although, like I said, I'm not one myself, but I learned a lot along the way because being gay and Muslim, I
Yeah,
had to
totally.
learn, but I still don't consider myself a scholar or an academic. But I know the basics of my faith, and I like to always learn more, not just about my faith, but other people's faith too, be it Christianity, Judaism, or whatever, Hinduism. And I want to learn about it, and I do. But it's about respect. What's what I mean? Just respect each other. Talk to someone, in the way you'd want to be spoken to, but understand where they're coming from too. They might have a certain faith tradition,
Yeah, no, totally. If there was one quote out there that represents who you are as a person, what quote would you choose, and why would you choose that particular quote?
Well, it'd be Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "Be the change you want to see in the world."
So
Meaning,
yeah,
do it yourself. Be that person. Be the change you want to see in the world. Because he had his campaign. It was called Satyagraha. It was the path of truth and righteousness. Satya means truth, and Graha is the path. So it was a path to enlightenment. And it was Martin Luther King who followed the non-violent, protest movement of Gandhi, because he read Gandhi while he was studying to be a theologian, which he became, so he read Gandhi and he said, hold on, if through non-violent means, if this little man in loincloth could take down the British Empire, then maybe we could do something in civil rights in America. And that quote came to Martin Luther King as well, be the change you want to see in the world. Similarly with Martin Luther King, when he talked about, darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can do that. Or another one is like, it was Malcolm X, who was a Muslim, education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And he was, an ex-criminal, someone, who lived through the whole system, his father was a Baptist preacher, who grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, converted to the Nation of Islam and subsequently to more Orthodox Islam, and, and he always said education is our passport to the future. He was talking about African American people primarily, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And I always stayed with me, because when he came out of prison and he changed his life, he realized, and look at the journey he went on. Unfortunately, both were assassinated. All three of them, people I was talking about. Gandhi was assassinated, so was Malcolm X, and so was Martin Luther King.
Anyone who's trying to push.
They all had a message. And the message wasn't one of violence. It was one of peace and love, for humankind.
Is there ever a time where you feel like you want to give up because you feel like you haven't got the support that you need? What advice would you give to people out there who feel like this, who feel like they haven't got support, or they don't have a lot of money to do things, or their sexuality, they're feeling like they can't be who they really want to be inside? What advice would you give to them as an activist and somebody who is a gay man, so that you can uplift them and make them understand that they are not alone?
I mean, we all feel like that, particularly, during our formative years, when you're going through changes, like through puberty or school, or if you're being bullied, even before that, like, you find, in school, a lot of kids say they're being bullied or whatever, or growing up, you have a lot of angst and problems. Is to know that the feelings you have are universal, and it's not just in this country, it's worldwide, it's not just young people. It's people, say, who are older, who left school, people 30s, 40s, older, pensions. It never changes. That feeling sometimes of being isolated, or being isolated in your thoughts, or, feeling despondent, or everything is getting on top of you. You have to reach out and talk to people that you can trust, and you have to confide in someone at least, or, some institution. Like if I say, if there's a child that is being bullied, I'll tell them to go out to school and talk to your school, or talk to your parents, or talk to your friends. If they're feeling suicidal, phone a helpline. You've got Childline, that's been around for a while. Now you've got Silverline for older people, So there are groups out there who will support you, and online you can find them now. It's so easy, You could just tap the Samaritans, you can phone them, or you find them online, or you go to LGBT switchboard, whatever is your problem, or whatever community you identify with. Google it, search it online to see, or gay, Muslim, or Christian being bullied, whatever. You'll find something, I promise you. Is to go online nowadays, because a lot of people, obviously, we have smartphones and technology. That's why I'm mentioning that. But, and it's much easier now, to kind of access that support than it was, say, when I was growing up. We didn't have the internet and such like. Occasionally you'd see on the television, the Childline has started, and whatever. But then you have to find a phone, and, you don't want your parents to listen or whatever. So it was more difficult in those days, But today, with technology, what I'm saying is there's a lot of support groups that, like what I do. We're just a small, part of it, And that's why, I started my work, and I continue to do my work, is to support others. And there's so many support groups for whatever you're experiencing, whatever community you're from, be it if it's racial, or, to do sexuality, whatever your problem is, be it depression, mental health. Nowadays we have so many different weeks that we're Mental Health Awareness Week, and we have all these things. And sometimes people say, oh, there's so much going on. But that's because in the past we didn't really address it as a society. We didn't address mental health well-being issues. We didn't address issues pertaining to sexuality or race. And look where it's brought us. It's brought us to this point. And now we have a much more open society, and we are making changes through, be it social media. And it's about meeting. It's not just about social media. It's about meeting people too. Sometimes you might need to talk to someone one-to-one. So talking therapies can help sometimes, or just talking to someone. It doesn't have to be, in a counseling setting. Sometimes talking to a friend, or if you're part of a support group, a wider network where you can chat. You can go to, certain organizations will have that facility where you can chat to other members.
Do you know any specific organizations that people can go to, just to throw the information out there for the people? Do you know anywhere where people can go to?
Mine do a lot of work with mental health awareness.
Yeah.
And I know mine, they're all over the UK, and they do great work when they do their workshops and such like. And they have, kind of different bases all around the country. So that's one that pops to mind. And then you have the LGBT switchboard. You know, you have Gallup, where you can report hate crime from an LGBT point of view. You have the LGBT switchboard where you can phone if you're feeling down. But like I said, mine, you got, you know, Childline for young people who experience problems. They can phone them. You know, they can find the number online. So yeah, there's, you know, a plethora of groups out there that you can access, you know, and who actually have those interactive services like mine. They have workshops and they do, you know, activities for people who are experiencing mental health issues, and you can actually go to their centres and they have counselling too. You know, I've seen the great work they do because I've been there, because they do this LGBT workshop, and that's why I went, because, you know, my interest was in that, learning about, you know, how to engage with, you know, the LGBT community who are experiencing mental well-being issues. You know, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening out there, you know, and you have to, you know, just, find out where you're going into that. But nowadays, at least you got that. At least you can Google, you know, such information.
Ejel, if you wasn't doing this, what do you think you would be doing?
Do you know what? I'll be just full-time working in the media, you know, be it, you know, writing, like before, like I said, you know, I worked in media production. I worked in all aspects of media production, being editing, writing, filming. I did everything, you know, and, you know, I continue to do so. And I'd be working, you know, I worked in the theatre before, you know, I write extensively, you know, fiction and non-fiction, prose, poetry. So yeah, I'd be doing something in the creative industries for sure, you know, and I'd be doing that full time. The activism work is a kind of, you know, taking me in another direction, but in one way I try to kind of amalgamate my skills as well. You know, there's a crossover. So I use some of my skills, you know, for different non-profit organizations, you know, that promote mental health or LGBT issues, or not just LGBT, like if they're a charity or non-profit organization, irrespective of what background they're from, I try to help them if I can with my media skills, free of charge. And I've done that in the past, and I continue to do so, you know, wherever I can, you know, be it in PR, communications, you know, behind the scenes, you know, any media work, you know. So I do that. Yeah, you know, I would have been doing that, but I just felt that kind of, you know, the LGBT work, it doesn't take precedence over my other work, but obviously I need that media work to kind of sustain me financially and carry me. Otherwise, I will not be able to really do the work I do. But the LGBT work took over because for so long I was telling other people's stories through media, if you know what I mean. You know, I was the guy behind the camera or behind the scenes. And someone said to me once, why don't you talk about your own story? Because you always, you know.
Yeah, you have a story, yeah.
And that's why I started doing, you know, in recent years, it was more about, you know, that kind of, that's why now if you Google me, it comes up with all my, you know, activism stuff mainly, you know, at first, you know, but then you'll see the other, you know, media stuff. Initially, my inlays into it was the media work. So, you know, I balance it now. What I mean is, you know, my media work crosses over into my activism work, you know, and I can promote it, you know, and obviously I've got the media skills, you know, so I can network and stuff like that, you know, and that's where now I talk about my own experiences, where previously it was me highlighting other people's experiences.
See, if there is one thing that tell us one thing that people don't know about you that you would like to share on the Ask People podcast that you don't usually say on any other interviews that you have, so people get to know who you are better, what would you say?
Well, just that I'm a normal human being like everyone else, that, you know, apart from all the work I do, in one way, that it is so normal. That my life is so normal, like everybody else. Like I have up days and down days, and, you know, that's the part I don't talk about. Because normally I'm talking about my work, my media work, or my activism work, you know, which are certain facets of my personality. But in reality, I'm just a normal person like everybody else who has same issues and same fears and aspirations, you know, and that part of it I don't get through because in many ways, you know, I'm always promoting something, a campaign, or, you know, I'm working, you know, on a media project, you know, so I have to be upbeat, that's my job. Like if I worked, you know, and I've done those jobs before, like I worked in a shop and, you know, I worked in a factory and I've done those jobs. So I know how that feels. For any job, you can't go there with your problems, your own emotional baggage, innit? You have to be there as a human being. So it's like, for me, one thing I would say, just, you know, I'm just like you, Xavier, or your listeners. We're all the same, irrespective of what job we do. Let's respect each other. Because like I said, I came from working class background, still working class. I've done those jobs. It's just I feel like everyone else, and maybe that's something that, that I should put forward, like you said now, that to explain to people that other people might not know, is that I'm just a human being and I have the same fears and aspirations and same worries, like everybody else does. And people like me, you might be in a privileged position and other people think that we've got it all together. No, we haven't. It's the human condition, to, want to strive, to do better and come to terms with your situation, or try, to um, um, come to terms with your own circumstance. It's that really. Many people might think that me, and it's people like me that, like, no, I'm just a human being, and that, maybe sometimes, particularly my work, it didn't always come across, because someone would say, oh, you're courageous, you're fearless, you're out, and I think, no, I'm not. I'm not courageous or fearless. I have the same butterflies in my stomach or anticipation when I'm on a march or a campaign, or, and or even doing my media work. I met so many different people. You learn a job, you learn to be a certain way, and you try to improve yourself. But we're all human beings.
Yeah,
that's how I would say that. That people don't see that side of me, and and I hope, because normally it would be private. My partner would see that side of me, or my family. My immediate family, my mother, my sisters. People close like you'd be the same.
yeah,
our close circle see you, but not everyone else does.
yeah.
And you can't always put your guard down, because it's hard, especially in a professional environment. But just to let you know, like today, speaking to you, that I'm just a human being, just like everyone else.
You seem so. The one thing I admire is that when people do come on the Us People podcast, they do something that they don't normally do with other people, and that is let their guard down with me. And I think that is an exceptional, beautiful thing to be able to do that with me. So, Ejel, I want to thank you so much for doing that, because a lot of people will not do that and share their experiences, like share what they do, how they do it with me. So I want to thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. And, you've got a lot to do with it. You and your work you do, highlighting good work in the community, your personality, your compassion, that comes across, and that's why I did it. I'm not just brown nosing you. I'm not just doing this for media purposes. I mean it from the bottom of my heart, because I know, because I listen to your podcast. I'm aware of you in the media, the work you've done, and the work you continue to do to highlight people doing work, in different arenas, and it's because of you. I feel people can let their guard down and talk, because you've got that personality, you've got that skill, where your compassion, your humanity comes across. And I want to say that to the viewers, that you genuinely rock.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That actually humbled me so much right now.
No, I mean it.
That's really kind of you. Finally, I want you to do something for me. I want you to plug yourself as much as you can, so that people can find you literally on any social media you have. I want you to show people where you are, because you are a beautiful soul. And I want people to be able to connect with you in any way that they feel possible, because I know you've given me a compliment by saying all the things that you've said. But like I'm saying now, without people who have compassion like us, I don't think we will be able to have movements like we do.
Absolutely.
So plug it to me, Ejel. Plug all your social medias, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Facebooks.
Yeah, I'm on all of that as Ejel Khan, Ejel Khan, KHN. I'm on, like you said, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Ejel Khan, Ejel Khan. I'm there. My organization's is on all those platforms as well, because all there are links to, like Muslim LGBT Network is on Facebook, Twitter. I've got a link on my Instagram page as well, and on Facebook we have a Facebook page. So Muslim LGBT Network.wordpress.com is our website, but there's links to our website on all social media. So if you just go on Muslim LGBT Network, you'll find it. If you search it in any social media platform, you'll find it, Muslim LGBT Network, and you'll find links to my own website as well, ejelkhan.wordpress.com, and it's got a lot of my writings, my work that I've done, and this is a lot of my media work. It's not just my activism work, it's mainly this is my own personal site, ejelkhan.wordpress.com, and it's got my writings there. So some of the articles I've written, some of the poetry, prose, fiction, non-fiction, all my work as well.
Guys, please go check Ejel out, because I know that you won't be disappointed in his work. Ejel, again, thank you so much for coming on the Ask People podcast. Thank you, listeners, for listening to the Ask People podcast. And please remember, you can subscribe to Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer to listen to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also donate to the Ask People podcast on the Saviour Rocks website, or you can simply go into your PayPal account and type in paypal.me/Us People podcast. Thank you so much, and stay happy, stay positive, and as always, continue to be kind to one another.